Tonight, wildfires rage out of control in some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in California.
You gonna be okay? Hi? You gonna be okay?
More than 80,000 people have been ordered to evacuate. 2 people have been killed and several seriously injured.
There were mothers trying to find their kids. There were anxiety, panic attacks. It's terrible.
As fire chiefs admit there aren't enough firefighters to tackle the fast-moving flames, our correspondent confronts the mayor of Los Angeles.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor?
Coming up, fears of a water shortage and concerns over looting. We'll hear live from our correspondents on the scene and residents forced to flee. Plus, the rise of the cyber caliphate, how the so-called Islamic State embraced lone wolf terrorism. And the case against Benjamin Netanyahu. I speak to the director of a new documentary about the Israeli Prime Minister's corruption trial. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. We begin tonight with the apocalyptic images from California, where a state of emergency has been declared because of fast-spreading and dangerous wildfires. Residents abandoned their cars, their houses, and sometimes even their pets as the inferno engulfed entire neighborhoods. Just have a look at these images. What was once a busy, bustling shopping district reduced to smouldering, blackened ruins. Helicopters captured the huge spread of the fires from above. More than 1,000 structures are known to have been destroyed. On the ground, rescuers raced to evacuate the most vulnerable. These residents of a care home in Pasadena were wheeled to safety across a smoky, windswept road. More than 500 firefighters are battling 4 different blazes, with fire chiefs admitting they simply don't have enough personnel to put them out. And as the flames spread, there is growing anger about how budget cuts and low water reservoirs may have affected the response. We put some of those questions to the mayor of Los Angeles. You'll hear that exchange with our correspondent David Blevins in a moment, and a report from Martha Kellner on the scene. But let's go straight now to our first guest, who is in Los Angeles, and speak to Darren Hurwitz, a resident in Pacific Palisades who believes his home has been destroyed. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. What a horrifying situation. I mean, the images are, truly apocalyptic. But just tell us what you initially saw. I understand a small fire in a bush, which clearly then spread.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a harrowing ordeal. My wife and I were at home when the fire broke out, could see smoke in the air above our house, probably a mile or 2 away. And we knew we only had minutes to get our stuff, whatever possessions we wanted to take, and to get out. The fire just exploded. It moved incredibly fast. It turned from 1 fire into 10 fires very quickly. We saw homes on fire. You're seeing on the screen a video that I took just a few minutes after the fire broke out. Our children were at school about a mile away. We rushed to get them and to get out of the area safely. But I think everyone was taken aback both by the size of the fire and also how fast it moved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are looking at your images, as you say, and it just looks terrifying just how quickly this spread. You believe now that your home has been destroyed?
We believe that our home has been destroyed based on video and photos that we've seen in the media.
Yeah, I mean, California is used to wildfires, but I guess nothing like this. I mean, as you say, the speed in which, these fires have moved. And I guess, you're saying your house has been destroyed. I imagine, dozens of houses in the neighborhood have also been destroyed.
I'd say more than dozens. In fact, I think it will be hundreds, if not thousands of structures in our neighborhood. We live in Pacific Palisades, which is sort of a small town within the larger Los Angeles city. And our commercial district, and I believe most of the residences in Pacific Palisades have, in fact, been destroyed based on the footage that I've seen. I think this is turning into a nightmare scenario that looks something like the Lahaina Maui fires or some of the worst fires in California.
And you say you took what you could. Obviously, you were able to get to your children. Where are you now? And are there plans for people to be put in evacuation centres, or are people just relying on friends and family as they move to safer areas?
At the moment, we are in Ventura, California. We're about 50 or 60 miles up the coast from Los Angeles. Our friends in the area have mostly relocated with family or friends or in hotels, but also understand that not everyone has family or friends or the means to be able to take care of themselves, and would expect that evacuation centers will serve that valuable need.
Did you expect it to be so bad? I mean, were there warnings that, this is a very dry period and there are winds, a combination of all of these things could lead to devastation? Was there any kind of understanding of that?
Yes, the media and the National Weather Service, I think, did a very good job of warning people that this extreme fire weather was coming. With that said, until it happens, it feels speculative. And I think we were all taken aback by what happened. But we know we live in a wildfire prone area. We know the issues that California faces, that United States and the world faces with the growing wildfire threat, particularly with climate change and the new risks that we all face. So we weren't surprised that this happened. We were surprised that it happened to us and happened with the ferocity that it did.
Are you, just your thoughts on, the authorities admitting, the fire chiefs admitting that they just don't have enough personnel on the ground, and this is as a result of budget cuts and various other issues?
I commend the firefighters and the city for the actions that they took. This was a fast-moving fire that quickly overwhelmed the resources that the community or that the fire department had. I am greatly appreciative for everything that law enforcement has done in the LA area, and the mayor as well. That I feel like they are doing what they need to do, but also recognize that after these fires are out, there will need to be an evaluation and reevaluation of the resources that we dedicate to wildfires and how we respond to these kinds of situations.
Well, Darren, we're really grateful that you've joined us on the programme and that you and your family are safe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as we saw there, some remarkable pictures that have come in from LA. Let's just hear now from some of those forced to flee their homes, like Darren, who we spoke to just now, and just take a look at some of the most dramatic scenes we've witnessed so far.
It's really bad. The fires have jumped the roads, and people are starting to panic a little bit. And it's bad. And at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, everything was fine. By 10 o'clock, there was a dark sky. The fires have started. The fires are like small little fires this big. And then all of a sudden, they just listen to this terrible wind. This is the wind that I've never seen. Be careful down there. Be careful. I was just helping out, trying to get people in wheelchairs. There were people in wheelchairs trying to get out who didn't have time to put their footrests on. And we had to figure out how to pop a wheelie with these wheelchairs. There were little kids. There were mothers trying to find their kids. There were anxiety, panic attacks. It's terrible. And this wind won't let up. And the fires just won't let up. what can I do to help out? What can I do to calm people? You know, the man in the wheelchair, I took his face in my hands, and I looked at him, I said, "You're going to be okay." And he had some tears in his eyes and on his cheek. He was an older man, and I said, "You're going to be okay. And tonight you're going to have a good dinner. I promise you. You're going to have a good dinner." And the mother, who was hysterical, she couldn't find her daughter or son. I said, "You're going to find him. You're going to find him. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay."
One heck of a firefight. These people just arrived. This is the home that we entered the backyard to show this fire that was in the backyard here. And what you're witnessing is neighbors coming together to really just keep this home from burning in flames. 2285 Sinaloa here. This home next to it was on fire, and they were making gains here. They were making gains, and then all of a sudden the winds picked up. And you can just see how it's fueling the fire next door as these neighbors desperately try to keep their home from catching fire. They have 2 water hoses as they just try to water down the roof and the hedges of the home and the soffits and the rafters. But it's very scary here, but we've seen people staying behind here to just save their homes. There's no services here. It's every man for themselves. And we did have a lull just minutes ago. This is just how scary and unpredictable the situation is that 1 minute it looks like you have a fighting chance, and then the next the winds whip up and fuel the flames here.
It's a tragedy. I've never seen it come down this low before. I mean, we've had fires year after year up here.
Bring your son in.
Chris,
come here. Chris, I saw you dousing yourself with water too. Were you getting burned by the embers that were coming?
Oh, it was all the radiant heat coming off of there. It felt like I was catching on fire a little bit. So I had to keep myself cool. I was freaking out. I didn't want to panic.
The sun peeking through the billowing smoke. We are completely surrounded in black smoke. We're at Midwick and Sinaloa, and Mike and Jenny Rogers live at this property watching their neighbors' homes go down. This home, as we've just witnessed it, just being flattened, and the carport across the street here now completely engulfed.
This is unbelievable. Never thought it would happen to us.
I saw you on the roof. I talked to your wife, Mary. You guys evacuated last night.
Yeah, we went across town to Pasadena, a friend of ours, and didn't think we had to, but figured better safe than sorry. And then we got back this morning, had to zigzag our way across town to discover that, and then you know, what little damage happened here. So we're just trying to save what we have, if we can.
Well, let's bring in our correspondent, David Blevins, who also joins me live now from Los Angeles. And we're just looking at some of these horrifying images, but no real surprises, David, that this situation, as horrifying as it is, has quickly turned political as well.
That's right. We have just arrived in Los Angeles, where the inferno is raging around this city and its suburbs, but the political storm has already been sparked now too. Within the last hour, the President-elect Donald Trump has taken to his own Truth social media platform to say this: the fires in Los Angeles may go down in dollar amount as the worst in the history of our country. In many circles, they're doubting whether insurance companies will even have enough money to pay for this catastrophe. Let this serve and be emblematic of the gross incompetence and mismanagement of the Biden-Newsom duo. January 20th cannot come fast enough. A derogatory reference there to the Californian governor, Gavin Newsom, of course. The other person who finds themselves right in the eye of the storm is the Los Angeles mayor, Karen Bass, because not very long ago, she cut the fire department budget by tens of millions of dollars. She's also been criticised for being out of town while citizens' homes were burning. She's been on a visit to Ghana, but we caught up with her not very long ago at Los Angeles International Airport, and I think it would be an understatement to say she wasn't that keen to talk to us. Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up, please? Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home? Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. They're gonna come.
Ma'am, hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
David, as you say, she wasn't very keen to answer any of your questions there. And fire chiefs are also admitting that they just don't have enough personnel to take out the fires.
Yeah, they're fighting all sorts of challenges. They're talking about a water shortage. There are reports of fire hydrant failures. They've been unable to use firefighting aircraft for much of the day due to the smoke that is billowing ominously from the hills where the wildfires are raging. And I suppose despite that political storm, this is, of course, at its heart, a human story, because we've now 80,000 people evacuated. Tens of thousands of others are on standby to be evacuated. 2 lives have been lost in the Eaton fire, which is what's causing the consequence behind us. The city's iconic landscape almost shrouded completely by the smoke. And they're really just taking it one step at a time, hoping at some stage the wind's going to change direction or to die down, and that they're going to be able to get this fire under control.
OK, David, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. Now, wildfires in Los Angeles have now grown to such an extent that the county's fire chief has admitted, as we were saying there with David, that he can no longer has enough firefighters to hold back the flames. So what caused the fires to spread so rapidly? Victoria Seabrooks has been looking at what fueled the fires. Have a look.
Well, even the experts have been taken aback by just how quickly these extremely dangerous fires have spread. By Tuesday night, there were 3 huge blazes in northern Los Angeles, and more followed on Wednesday. Let's take the biggest, the Palisades fire, which started at 10:30 local time on Tuesday morning. This satellite image was taken just 15 minutes after it was first reported, the intensity already visible from the sky. It ballooned through the afternoon between the beach towns of Santa Monica and Malibu, and by midnight, it had already engulfed nearly 3,000 acres, destroying more buildings and homes than anyone has been able to count so far. We don't know yet what first sparked the fires. What we do know is they've been supercharged by fierce, dry winds blowing in from the northeast. As they hit the mountains around LA, they accelerate, which you can see across this big band of pink and purple here. These so-called Santa Ana winds, also nicknamed devil winds, plunge the humidity levels, which dries out the land, making it even more flammable. And here you can see how quickly the wind speeds picked up on Tuesday. The orange dots show gusts reaching 60 miles an hour. That speed's so strong, they've even prevented firefighting planes from taking off. Fire chiefs say low humidity, dry soils and high wind make the fire conditions about as bad as it gets. As for climate change, scientists need time to assess exactly what role it played, but broadly speaking, we know it is upping the danger in the US, driving hot and dry conditions that fuel fires like this. And it's extending the fire season, which usually ends around October. Southern California just had a particularly hot summer and almost no rain in what should now be the wet season. This map shows rainfall over the last 60 days compared to the average for that period. The bits in brown around Los Angeles, they've had hardly any rain. And all of this is what is behind this dire reality for thousands of LA residents, forced to flee their homes, which were torched in a matter of hours. Many houses in this area belong to the rich and famous, but are now in tatters. Californians are used to wildfires in summer. Now, even in winter, they will have to prepare for the worst.
That was Victoria Seabrooks there. Well, you're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. We've still got lots more coming up after the break. We'll have that report from our correspondent on the scene as the wildfires continue to spread.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Welcome back. Well, firefighters in California are dealing with some of the worst wildfires in several years. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner has been on the ground in Los Angeles, seeing some of the worst affected areas up close. She sent us this report.
Raging and still out of control, the wildfires which have devastated this city. Fanned by hurricane-strength winds, new blazes erupting here all the time. Firefighters battling but being defeated on all fronts. This is now the worst fire in LA's history. The epicentre is Pacific Palisades, one of its wealthiest neighbourhoods. Home upon home here, razed to the ground. People who evacuated will return to find only chimney breasts still standing. It's hard to believe, but this is the very centre of Pacific Palisades. This is one of LA's most exclusive neighbourhoods. It's home to the likes of Reese Witherspoon, Ben Affleck, Tom Hanks. All were evacuated. And look at what remains of the heart of this place. This building used to have an Italian restaurant, a couple of coffee shops, a bank. They're all now gone, and it's a similar picture over the other side of the road too. There used to be a smoothie bar in here, a clothes shop, a dry cleaner. It is almost complete destruction. With roads closed to most cars, local people came on bikes, horrified at what they found.
It's hard to process. I mean, it's as if I'm looking at a movie, you know. I don't know. It's stunning.
How's your home, sir?
Oh, it's gone. It's all the way gone, yeah. There's very few homes that made it.
What does this make you think when you see this?
It makes me think of something like the end of the world, like life and death situation. This is pretty extreme, the extremest thing I've ever seen. It's just, at this point, it's about surviving and about trying to save as many people as you can.
What will be the financial toll of this?
This is going to be probably the most expensive natural disaster in the history of the state, maybe the history of the country, because there are like $20–30 million houses that went up, and all of these houses are worth $3–4 million, and some of them $10 million. So all of the hundreds of houses that burned, I mean, you know, do the math.
It's staggering, isn't it, the scale of this?
It's mind-boggling how it came into town and gutted the commercial district. I mean, it's incomprehensible to me.
Some of LA's most iconic landscapes are transformed, contorted by fire and covered in ash. This is the Pacific Coast Highway, normally a stunning coastal drive. Oceanfront properties now dust. Clayton watches as his neighbour's home burns down.
They just had a baby 3 days ago, 4 days ago or something.
And they live in that house?
Yeah, they did.
Anger is growing at the perceived lack of firefighters on the ground, people attempting to protect their own properties.
We've had 2 hoses and there hasn't been one single fire truck here the entire night, which I understand. I guess there's only so many, but not one. I watched the entire Malibu burn down without any water being sprayed on it at all.
A firefighter tells me they struggle to get enough water from these fire hydrants overnight. The state's Governor, Gavin Newsom, not addressing those concerns.
Governor, firefighters are telling me they didn't have enough water to tackle these blazes. Were you ill-prepared, Governor, for a blaze of this size?
It is already a worst-case scenario for the people here. But with fires still smouldering and winds still whipping, officials warn the danger hasn't passed yet.
And we'll be speaking to Martha in a moment, but I just want to bring you these images. They've been coming in to us. They're pictures which as you can see from the screen, show firefighters trying to put out a fire in a neighbourhood in Altadena. And as Martha was saying, the fire brigade is really struggling with personnel. And some of the residents there were saying that some houses haven't even had a drop of water on them because of the lack of water. But you can see there one of the firefighters getting on top of one of the neighbouring homes overlooking the house that is burning down. Some of these neighbourhoods don't have any structures standing, but you can see there that neighbourhood in Altadena where firefighters are trying to put out that blaze. These are aerial shots of Altadena as well. And as you can see, I mean, the wildfires just spreading, high winds and the lack of rain are really the main factors driving the Southern Californian fires. And as you can see, entire neighborhoods affected there. The images that are coming in completely devastating, where neighborhood streets completely flattened and destroyed by these blazes. And people have just either abandoned their homes or tried to put out the fires themselves because of the lack of firefighters in the area and the lack of preparation for the magnitude of these fires. Well, joining me now is Orly Israel, a Pacific Palisades resident whose home is now destroyed. Thank you so much, Orly, for joining us. It is an incredibly difficult time, I imagine, for you and your neighbours, knowing that your family home has now been destroyed.
You said it. It's challenging. It's so confusing because what do we do? No one even knows what to do.
And Orly, you actually went back to your home to try and, take whatever you could and save whatever you could. Just tell me about that moment and what happened.
Well, me and a friend of mine and a neighbor decided, why not try to stop the fire? I knew a bunch of people in Malibu from a recent fire who stood in their yards with hoses and fought off the flames, and we didn't want to give up until the very end. And we stood there with hoses putting out the embers that would rain onto the yard like snow made out of fire. And every time there was a bush that catch on fire, we hose it off. But eventually the blaze got too big and you couldn't go near it without getting cinders in your eyes and burning your lungs. And so we eventually just decided we had to get out of there for our own safety.
Yeah, that must have been terrifying. Also, the fact that you had to take matters into your own hands.
Well, the fire was so massive that we knew that firefighters, they couldn't possibly save the houses. I think they were focusing on really preventing it from getting to other cities, and that was something we were all aware of. So we were just hoping that it would be less, that would be manageable, but it was not manageable at all.
Yeah, and just describe, I mean, the pictures we're seeing, it's like a horror film. It's apocalyptic, just entire neighborhoods that have been completely flattened like some kind of war zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you expect hell to look like out of a horror movie. The smoke is coming off of everything that can burn. The smoke is so thick you can't see more than 15 feet in front of you when you're driving. You're avoiding the wind blowing sticks and trash cans. The sound of houses on fire is like explosions, and the sound of the fire itself is really like a roar. Um, it hurts to breathe. It hurts to look. It's just surreal.
Yeah.
I'm still in shock.
Yeah, I can imagine, and the speed. It's just how quickly the fires are moving from house to house, and all of the residents.
It was moving so fast because it was coming down the hill, so and the wind was blowing. So if the hill was up here and the rain of embers were coming and just everything over here was popping and popping, and just trees that were old were exploding into embers and throwing, and so the whole block would be on fire and different houses would
Yeah.
go up fast.
I mean, they're saying that it's the high winds and the fact that the dry conditions, just in the days leading up to this situation, was there a sort of awareness that this was coming, or did you feel like you were caught off guard and by surprise?
I didn't know there was a fire until my friend texted me at 10 in the morning, "Hey, are you okay?" And I look out the window and there's a huge cloud of smoke over the house. I mean, there was no warning at all.
And as you say, this is your childhood home. I understand you moved there when you were quite young. Where will your family now go? What do you think will happen to so many of the residents there who are effectively homeless at this stage?
Well, one of the things that I've really been appreciative of this whole experience is that I got a text from a friend before I even knew there was a fire, and I have not felt alone in this struggle for even 1 second. I've had people reach out to me who I haven't spoken to in years to say they support me, that I can sleep on a couch or a bed, and so I believe that that's happening for everybody. And if you know somebody in California, please reach out to them, because if you feel like you have community, there is hope. And maybe I'm homeless now, but I feel very much like I'm supported.
And, as I said, you've lived in the area for a very long time. Have you seen anything like this?
Never like this. There was a fire in Malibu just 4 or 5 months ago that put people's houses to look like this, but living in the Pacific Palisades in more of a city area, this is just totally unexpected. The whole city is completely burned to the ground.
Well, Oli, we're really grateful that you've joined us here on the programme. We're looking at some of those horrifying images, firefighters trying to put out the blaze. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as we've been saying, our correspondent Martha Kellner has been out there filming and capturing the situation on the ground. She joins us live now from Pacific Palisades. Martha, just looking at your piece there, I mean, entire neighbourhoods flattened like some kind of war zone. Things that existed no longer exist, and it all just happened so quickly.
Yeah, the phrases apocalyptic and war zone are often overused in these circumstances, but it really does apply here. It looks like a bomb went off, as one man put it to me earlier. I've been driving throughout this neighbourhood all day, and it's actually unusual when you come across a house that is untouched. Almost everything here it has been ablaze at some point, whether it's been put out or whether it's completely razed to the ground. You can see now, this is where I am right now. This is a bank which just a couple of hours ago was absolutely fine. It was untouched, but now it's gone up in flames. And in fact, firefighters have stopped trying to tackle many of these blazes. Just beyond where we are, beyond the bank, there's a church which is now surrounded by this black, acrid smoke. Firefighters trying to protect that structure. There is a small part of the Pacific Palisades, and in fact it just so happens to be the area with all the big designer shops that has remained pretty much intact. But otherwise, everything here is gone, and people gradually throughout the day are making their way back to assess the damage to their homes, to their businesses. They're doing so on bicycles mainly and scooters, because these roads are still traffic. And when they get here, they can't quite believe what they're seeing, because when they left, most of them in the afternoon hours yesterday, there were flames in the hills beyond here. But it's not like any of the structures within Palisades, Pacific Palisades village, were on fire. So a lot of them are just saying to me that they can't believe what they're seeing, and that they thought that this particular community wouldn't be so vulnerable to wildfires, because it's not completely surrounded by canyons and by brush. And so I think that's what shocked people, the fact that it's spread so quickly and so unpredictably too.
Yeah, Martha, you know, obviously, understandably, you're in a very difficult place there, and there are some problems with your images, but we're grateful that you're able to, you know, still be there and give us a sense of the picture. Martha, some of the people I've been talking to have said that, you know, they understand that the firefighters aren't, the strategy here is that, you know, they've just realised in some circumstances there's no point in trying to save these homes. It's just about containing the fire and ensuring that it doesn't start sort of spreading to other parts of, you know, the city and other parts of California.
Yeah, I think there's no denying, Yalda, that the firefighters have been stretched too thinly over the past 36 hours. They've simply been no match for the strength of these wildfires fanned by these unusual winds up to 100 miles per hour overnight. And so you've seen them making these calculations about just which buildings they're going to fight really hard to save. And they've done that by looking at which structures directly affect other areas. So, for instance, this bank is surrounded, where I am now, is surrounded by buildings which are already razed to the ground. So they've made a calculation that actually they're not going to fight to save this particular building. Whereas around half a mile down the road, there are a number of multi-million-dollar homes that are under threat from a fire that's raging through the canyon. And there are dozens and dozens of fire engines, firefighters trying to protect those homes because they're worried if that row catches fire, then the whole neighbourhood will go up in flames. Alongside this, there's also anger. I think you saw earlier in my piece, anger from people at what they say, what they believe is them being left alone to try and fight their own fires with no help from the authorities and obviously the superior firefighting abilities that the professionals have.
Yeah, Martha, thank you so much for all of your reporting and stay safe. We'll speak to you again at some point. Thank you so much. Okay, let's just change focus now for a moment and move to other news. After a sustained bombing campaign by the US and allied forces, the conventional wisdom heading into this decade was that the so-called Islamic State was a depleted force. The caliphate they'd promised to build was in tatters, and yet recent attacks like the one in New Orleans provided a stark reminder that their ideology lives on. Online, lone wolf attackers can still be inspired to kill. So what's really left of the so-called Islamic State? Here's my take.
A new year, but an old enemy. 14 people died on New Year's Day in New Orleans in an Islamic State-inspired attack. The pole where the IS flag was raised, a reminder that even a decade on, its ideology and followers remain as determined as ever. And less than 2 weeks earlier, an attack on a German Christmas market injured hundreds and killed 5. The exact motive was unknown, but the style apparently straight from the IS playbook. The so-called Islamic State grew to global notoriety between 2013 and 2019, battling for territory in Iraq, Syria and Libya, beheading its enemies along the way, and instructing and encouraging its supporters worldwide to commit acts of terror in their own countries. The so-called caliphate was pushed back by the United States and its allies. But though their territory shrunk, the ideology certainly didn't disappear. In recent years, Islamic State's global franchise has been active in Afghanistan, Somalia, Mali, the DRC, Turkey and the Caucasus region. ISIS-K claimed responsibility for an attack at a sold-out gig in a concert hall in Moscow last March, which killed at least 137 people. While the CIA says this man planned to kill tens of thousands at a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna before authorities foiled his plans. And with the recent fall of Assad's regime in Syria, where thousands of the most dangerous fighters are held, there are warnings that the danger of a resurgence there has doubled. But far beyond their physical presence is their online reach. The group's violent rhetoric is now being packaged in new formats and pushed out to thousands of supporters using social media, opening up a new, ever-changing frontier in the fight against terrorism.
Joining me now is Clara Brocart, a research fellow at Sufan Centre, which tracks the online activities of the so-called Islamic State. Clara, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, many, ask whether once the caliphate was destroyed, whether that was the end of IS. But frankly, that isn't the case. I mean, perhaps they didn't have the same sort of power that they once did because of the landmass, but they called on people to move to the online space. And within that, they sort of said, stay where you are, don't travel to the caliphate, which was predominantly Syria and Iraq at the time, launch attacks from where you are in Western capitals.
As you highlighted there in your report, it's a global franchise now. It has provinces across Africa as well as in Afghanistan. And the territory it holds in Africa should not be underestimated. There is still a foreign fighter phenomenon, way smaller than it was at the height of the caliphate in Syria and Iraq. There are foreigners who travel, for example, to the Islamic State province in West Africa, in Mali. But as you say, one of the most pressing threats right now to the West are its external operations. The external operations are nowhere near the number they were in 2016 when they were at their height, but the kind of tempo of these plots have picked up significantly in the past year to year and a half. Which is very concerning. Almost all of these plots in the past year to year and a half have been Islamic State inspired rather than enabled or directed. So these are individuals that have not had any direct contact with the Islamic State, who have been inspired only by the Islamic State and their propaganda to commit an attack on their behalf.
Yeah, and it feels like Western intelligence agencies, security officials are very concerned about this, because it's one thing going after some kind of sleeper cell, some kind of IS sleeper cell. It's another when you've got lone wolves who are operating without even making any kind of contact with the so-called Islamic State and just being inspired by their propaganda online.
Absolutely. And it's very hard with all of the operational security measures being taken by some of these Islamic State supporter groups online on different encrypted platforms to actually track them and see who's behind these accounts. So that forms another layer of complexity for law enforcement to actually see who's engaging with these communities, sharing propaganda. That's the main issue here.
Yeah, and security officials, intelligence agencies are also saying that, this current period that we are in, it's sort of flashing red right now in terms of the kind of threats that they're seeing and the kind of plots that they're foiling. The same sort of flashing red lights that they were seeing just in the years leading up to 9/11.
I mean, yes, this is absolutely true. When you're in these communities, you see the pace of the propaganda. You see active encouragements, for example, in celebrations after the New Orleans attack, encouraging others to commit similar attacks. There is definitely this feeling of momentum in these communities that brings me a lot of worry.
Yeah, and Clara, I guess the difference between Al-Qaeda and Islamic State is that Islamic State has been quite clever and sophisticated in taking their fight online and having the sort of propaganda, the newsletters, the newspapers they have, where they inform people of their activities.
Exactly. So they have this, vast ecosystem of different kind of semi-official and official outlets that publish newsletters, instructions, DIY, for example, explosive manuals. And on top of all of that, we saw in 2023 a more coordinated effort to make sure that all of these materials get translated and into as many languages as possible and get spread. So there's even that component. And then to speak to their kind of, I guess, innovation, We've even seen them experiment with artificial intelligence. For example, there was an AI-powered news anchor character that was claiming attacks. So this is definitely one of Islamic State's strengths, its propaganda ecosystem.
Yeah. Clara Progat, we're really grateful that you've joined us and shared your analysis with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, both Richard Engel and I have been reporting on the group for the best part of the last 10 years, and we both have our fair share of stories covering the so-called Islamic State. Well, back in 2022, I was in Helmand province in Afghanistan and embedded with the local Taliban, and one of their bomb makers took me out to tell me how the group was planning on targeting a local ISIS cell in the area. Just take a look. The reason he was taking me out to where we were going is because they had found an ISIS sleeper cell. I said, how have you sort of, foiled this operation? Where have you gathered the intelligence? And how have you targeted these ISIS fighters? And what they had done is the Taliban actually have a suicide bombers squad. And so they had used their suicide bombers to go in and target the ISIS suicide bombers. And that just sort of gives you a sense of the former terrorists knowing how, the current terrorists are operating and virtually beating them at their own game. Want to hear more of the episode wherever you get your podcasts, please do listen and follow us, as I said, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, it's been billed as the documentary Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want you to see. The BB files can't currently be shown in Israel because of Israeli Prime Minister's ongoing corruption trial. The film is based on leaked police interrogation tapes filmed during the investigation. Benjamin Netanyahu denies all of the charges. Just take a look.
Netanyahu is the architect of chaos. And as we speak, when all eyes are on the front in Gaza and the front in Lebanon, he is implementing his plan in the West Bank with the extreme right. He may create a situation where it's irreversible.
Well, I can speak now to the director of the BB Files, Alexis Bloom. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. This documentary has also been nominated for an Academy Award. But just tell us how this actually landed on your desk.
Well, to be fair, it landed on Alex Gibney's desk, who's my producer. He got a message on Signal from an anonymous source saying they had some interesting material. And he very quickly brought me on board, and I had a look at it and established, how many hours we had with whom and what it was.
And just tell me, I mean, when you saw what it was, did you think there's just a treasure trove of information here that we need to then form a documentary out of this?
Yes, absolutely, I did. Benjamin Netanyahu is a consummate performer. All of his interviews are very carefully orchestrated. And in contrast, what we received, this leaked material, was much more raw, much more authentic, and gave a much better sense of the man behind these performances, of the sort of private world of Netanyahu and his inner circle. So immediately, Alex Gibney and I knew that we had gold.
Alexis, has this been difficult to put together, given October 7, what Israel has been going through, the war that's been prosecuted in Gaza over the course of the last year, and then, of course, the situation with the Prime Minister, his own grip on the country and the government?
Yeah, it's been a tricky project, I guess, to direct and also to get out in the world for various different reasons. But I don't think that much changed in our understanding of Netanyahu. We started this project before October 7th, and certainly it changed the stakes. The stakes became much, much higher, but the man himself didn't really. When we started, he'd already formed his coalition with the extreme right wing, with people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and the war just provided them with different tools and provided Netanyahu himself with a different opportunity to survive politically. I would say that the war has been pretty good for his personal political survival.
And is that something that you've, I guess, many have often talked about, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is a survivor? Is that something that comes through for you? And is that something that sort of you gained a deeper understanding, despite, the tragedy of October 7 and everything else that followed?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Netanyahu is Israel's longest serving prime minister. And he's nothing if not a survivor. His approval rates were rock bottom after October 7th. He presided over the single largest intelligence failure in Israel's history and a terrible tragedy. And he's now sort of slowly rising up again in the polls and using, I would say, the instability in the region to his advantage. So yes, he's a survivor, and he'll marshal anything around him in order to survive. And I'd say instability is his friend.
Well, fascinating talking to you. Alexis Bloom, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Well, let's just go back to our main story here this evening and bring you some of the images that have been coming into us. These pictures show, as we said, firefighters trying to put out a fire in a neighbourhood in Al Tadina. You're looking at some of those aerial images. And as our correspondents were saying, who were reporting on the ground, the words apocalyptic and war zone really do apply to the situation in Southern California at the moment with these wildfires. We'll leave you with these images. Good night for now.